My friends, it feels like the day, Monday, when you go back to work and you step foot in the office and you're like, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now. Welcome. I'm Wayne Gerard. We're going to be breaking down Juventus Roma, what went right for the old lady, what went wrong for the Giallorossi and Jose Mourinho. We're going to take a little look at his press conference as well. I thank you guys for joining me. So today I went to Roma Club New York. It was a lot of fun, honestly. It was a little bit of a strange day because people were definitely not as loud as in the past. And that kind of, I think, coincided with the way that the team were playing. Just off the bat, no secrets. Am I happy? Am I disappointed with the way that Roma played? They kind of seemed mediocre. I was looking at Mourinho's presser right before I came on, and I'm using a translation from Football Italia, which is fine. We're not going to analyze every single word. Sometimes it's too long. But also, guys, as we're just hanging out here, throw in some comments, likes, subscriptions, and send around your football channels and help this page grow. And one thing before we start to really get into it, I want to ask you a question. I see that there's 7 people in right now, and you guys, you're loyal. You always come on my channel, and I appreciate that. One thing I haven't seen though is the page grow. So subscriptions are not up that much, not compared to last year. And my question is, do you think it's due to me putting commercial ads before people come on, like pre-records or most of my live streams, excluding today? They typically have commercials where you have to wait to see the ad and then you can watch. Do you think that by putting those ads, I'm hurting visibility and therefore limiting the growth of the channel? I'm curious as to this because it's been weird. It's been like a few subscribers here. And of course, that means that people aren't watching compared to last year. Is this channel not that great? I think it's okay. Like we have decent conversations. People join in. It's fun, right? Even on a day like today, we can take comfort with each other and kind of joke around and talk about the ins and the outs and what's wrong, what's good, if there is anything good. And that's what I've been thinking. So I have Diogo in here right now, and he says commercials are not the problem. Angelo is here. I got to chill with him today at Roma Club New York. And like I was saying, Angelo, it was a bit quiet today. I don't know what was up with the crowd, but definitely wasn't that same type of enthusiasm. LB is here, says Mourinho won't change his formation, so no need for a winger. Would fit El Shaarawy perfectly as the 4-2-3-1 would. And I wonder if formation is part of it. One thing which shocked me, I was very curious today, was kind of how Leo points out here earlier today. He says it's just a poor attack. And I wonder if it's like the desire. I see the team, they go through the motions, they're methodical, and they play tactically, it's fine. We're gonna even take a look at one of the pieces here today, a little clip from CBS. That's my streaming service here. And I want to analyze a little bit further as to the issue that Roma has in attack. You know what? Let's just do it right now. Let me present. Yeah, I am presenting. Okay, here we go. So let me go Shift 6, my little fancy button. And here, what you're going to see is like the letter U. So if you start at the bottom left of your screen, I think that's Cristante. And over on the left, that's got to be, I guess, Zalewski, perhaps. And then it's like this weird shape, right? But nobody checks into that space. So what you will see is Lukaku. And in this moment, and in this moment in particular, you're going to see Lukaku move into that gaping hole. Look at that. It's obvious that there needs to be someone to come into that void. The issue is that the center back is going to follow Lukaku into that space. But my thinking is, why isn't it Dybala who sneaks into that space? Instead, what it seemed like what the boys were trying to do was get the ball, rope it around, recycle it, and then play to Dybala on the wing, who in this situation has Chiesa on his side. So Dybala played a similar way to how Messi styles his game, where he kind of hides out on the pitch and then he looks to move around. The exception is that the quality of players on this Roma is significantly lower than the Argentina that won the World Cup, right? We don't need to go further into that. I think that's self-explanatory. But it's this rhythm, and I think if I can not press play for copyright reasons, but if I advance that just a little bit, what you're gonna see here is that's supposed to be 920. See, you can clearly see Lukaku checks into that space. He's covered by the low block of Juventus because they're already up a goal and they're essentially playing a 7-2-1 formation. And now Roma's severely limited. And if you look at the right side of your screen there, you have Dybala all alone. But this is your fantasista. He's not a true winger. So the fact that Dybala has isolated himself, or Mourinho has, I'm not sure. I'm going to assume that this is part of the tactic here. And then it's actually Lukaku who checks, leaves this big gap because if Lukaku gets that ball, he's going to play back to Cristante. And then what's Cristante going to do? He's going to try to play a big ball. If you get that ball out to the winger, it's the same thing. It's the big ball. Okay. So Roma's problem was not that there weren't enough opportunities. It was that the opportunities which came often saw the center forward being Lukaku isolated in 3v1s versus center backs. On top of that, when it came to creating, the other issue was that Dybala, same thing, 3v1s. He gets the ball. Look at the pyramid around him. He's completely trapped. If there is a pass which goes to him, Chiesa drops. He's got coverage with his left back there. I'm not sure who that is. And then he's even got a left center back to it's a 3-on-1. Dybala has no chance. So Lukaku instead moves into that space. What I think Roma needs to do here, and I'm going to put on my little coach, my Ted Lasso hat for a second. I think that they need to overload better. And then this idea of just whipping the ball into the center forward is useless if it's going to be a 3v1 for Lukaku, who honestly didn't have a great game. And he's had a few not so great games. So when we talk about purchasing Lukaku and what that would mean now that the tax decree is going to be lifted, that seems to me more and more distant, the signing of Lukaku. But there has to be something different here because this didn't work. Simply, right? If it doesn't work, you can't keep doing it. And this is one of the biggest challenges that any Serie A team would face, which is trying to come back against Juventus at their own home with all the powers at be against them, right? And they're playing so low. There's limited space. So how do you break that down? Overloads. That's the only way. That's the only realistic chance. Roma does not have Vlahovic. They don't have a 24, 25-year-old striker in their prime who's tough as nails, who's also extremely fast and has a rifle of a shot. It doesn't exist. So the only way to break this down is by intricate 1-2 balls, something which slips through the back line. It's got to be shifty. It's got to be super technical. But Roma doesn't have those players. They have Dybala, but once again, he's isolated. Now what do? You lose. You lose. Simply, that is the outcome of this. I'm going to look quickly here. Not quickly. I'm going to take a look at the comments coming in here. Okay, we should get to Alex's comment, and he says it's he couldn't wait for the live. I had to push it back. So I chilled a little bit at the club afterwards, and he said Roma played very well today, just unlucky with the Llorente mistake. Draw would have been fair. Pinto should clearly see that Roma needed a good winger. Fair enough, Alex. Yeah, it was tense. LB says, don't think it's commercials. We were talking about the issue as to why this channel is not really growing as quick as I want it to. And he says, it's not like you're the one channel who does commercials in the middle of the live stream. Yeah, that's true. So Diogo says, yeah, not a problem. How about Indica with that save? like Angelo says here, we should give proper respect to Indica. He had a couple mistakes. His passes were not so great at times, but that save was just as good as a goal. Tremendous from him. Ioannis, what's up, my friend? Says it's frustrating, but not necessarily angry. Roma played a good game, but couldn't convert. So yeah, that's what we've been breaking down. Like, why can't Roma convert? LB also says the Dax degree is a bigger loss than this game. What does Roma do? Let's have this discussion. I'm going to get to Matt's comment, and Courage is in here as well as Leo's. I see them coming in. What does Roma do now with this tax decree? If they cannot purchase players and fund them, even on a loan deal, Lukaku, what happens next? How does the team restructure? Will it be just youth? Is it just a matter of, okay, well, Roma's got the best academy of Italy. Let's make something with them, the way that Ajax does. But let's not forget that Ajax also has a monopoly on the rest of the Netherlands. If Ajax comes knocking at your door, you can sure as bet that mommy and daddy are going to say, okay, we are moving to Amsterdam and you're going to play with them. That's for sure, on top of their international scouting network. And I'm not sure that Pinto does have a lot of connections and the real eye for talent, the way that like Walter Sabatini did. You know, he brought in Joao Costa, outside defender for Roma in the Primavera. I think he'll be the next one to make the jump up. But additionally, not too much. So what does Roma do now with this tax decree? I do think it is part youth. I think that the requirements of your sporting director now change. I think now, yes, you have to go for somebody like a Walter Sabatini. And as far as everything that we've seen so far, I don't think Thiago Pinto is that type of guy. Thiago Pinto is the guy to get rid of your dead weight. He'll work long hours. He'll bring in the player that the coach wants. But as far as a true visionary who spots talent, I don't think that's him, to be honest. And I say that because there's no precedent. I haven't seen him bring in a Lamela or a Marquinhos. That hasn't existed at a time where Roma has really needed that. So I think we can just go off of precedent and how things have been for the past 3 years to make us understand who it is and what type of profile that Roma really need. Okay, so we've got youth, right? Youth. We can talk all day about that. But if we look at players that have come through the ranks, Politano, even Calafiori now, who's playing center back for Bologna, one of the best center backs in Serie A currently statistically, and then Fratesi, and then Gianluca Scamacca. Hey, it's not that bad of a team. If you had kept these guys, would Roma be in a worse position than they are now? If you added 2 or 3 quality players, I don't think so. You kept Tahirovic, you've got Pisili. There's a bunch of other players that we can mention, and you guys can throw out some names here too. So that to me, I think is the B team on top of it would be something that really helps. You get a way that Roma play, that you set the tone for the organization. Roma's going to play total football. They're going to play a 4-3-3, whatever, a 4-2-3-1. Pick your formation, right? But you're going to play with this type of setup. You're going to be a high pressing team. You're going to be a low block team. And that's got to be for the first team. It has to be for the academy all throughout the Primavera. And then you've got your B team. And if you get your B team, and now we see Juventus's next gen, their next generation, that's their B team. It's really paying off with players like Yildiz. He's an 18-year-old. He was a problem for Roma today. Hey, look, there's something to be said for that because Juventus realized they too had to restructure. They've had their own problems, right? We know about their problems. Hey, Courage says coaches mostly leave players with their confidences when it comes to stepping into space and taking the ball and creating something. So let's go back to this here. So what we were talking about, if you weren't with us about 5 minutes ago, is when Dybala is isolated here on the right side of your screen and Lukaku checks into that space. Maybe Mourinho does leave the players to their own devices, but I have to think that Dybala does not have a true free roaming role. He's not allowed to just occupy whatever space that he wants, just like a number 10 would. Instead, he's more of like a 7/10 here, and I don't like that for him. I think he needs to play a lot more centrally. Matt says, who is your favorite player for either team today? Ooh, I like that question. For either team, Vlahovic. I really like the way he plays. I like that he's nasty. He makes me afraid when he's on the ball. He had Llorente's card all game. He's got such a strong shot. He's got this attitude, which to me is like, I think eventually he's going to be sold to an even bigger team. It's odd to say like a bigger team than Juventus, right? But EPL, to me, he has English Premier League written all over him. He's one of the stars of the league. But to me, it's Vlahovic was the best man on the pitch. There are some Juventus players I do like, though, not Bonucci. Chiesa is a player I really love. And I think if you support the Azzurri, Chiesa has to have a place in your heart. If we think back to the Euros, Leo says, Ciao. Hi, Leo. What is your thought about Cristante and Mezzala? I thought he was good. Well, actually, today was more like a regista. But as a Mezzala, he's decent there. You know, I always think, and we always mention those goals he had for Atalanta years ago at this point, right? Probably 5-6 years ago, where he had like something like around 10 goals. So I like him getting further up the pitch. Do I think he has the legs anymore? Not really. I think that there's much faster number eights in the game. Like alongside Bove. I think he's a great player, like a squad player. Is he a week in and week out guy? I think Roma need to aim for higher skills, somebody who can bring more and offers more to the team in that position. And I'm going to read Angelo's here in the comments. He says he's upset that Bonucci is out. It is what it is. I understand he's not a popular option because of his background with the Juventus. Yeah, I'll say that. I wanted Bonucci to be signed because he's a warm body and he has that leadership. But on the other hand, he was one of the most Juventini of like the past 15 years. That old guard. So he stands for a lot. Not a lot of good things either. I think that it would be nice for Roma to look at other options, younger ones, players who could give more of a helping hand and be a starter rather than like a makeshift guy, if that makes sense. Just want to pause this real quick, guys. If you're new here, throw in a subscription. Really appreciate that. One of the things I've been bringing up earlier in this episode was how can we get the channel to grow more? Because I've seen a much slower subscription rate this season compared to last season. And I'm wondering if it was because I'm limiting how much people can see me because I've thrown in commercials and stuff like that. Anyway, thoughts on that? Write it into the comments. No, Sosa. I'll get to that. I was saying Cristante is that I want Cristante to stay with the team, but I'm thinking that Roma need to raise the overall level of midfielders. Leo says, is De Rossi's father the talent scout who is Primavera coach or director? Yes, that's Alberto De Rossi was the Primavera coach. I believe he stepped down recently. I'm not sure what his situation is at the moment. He says, also Leo says, in 2024, I hope Roma's young talent, Pisili, Pagano, and Costa have more time than Renato and Awar. I agree too. I think if these players were integrated earlier in the season, they could have given a much better opportunity. They would have been a much greater helping hand. They would have been more beneficial for the team, is what I'm trying to say. It would have been better for their overall growth. Roma wouldn't have made this haphazard signing. Everybody knew Renato Sanchez's injury history. If you go back to our videos in the summer, that was one criticism I had of the signing, and it proved out to be true, unfortunately, was when you look at the history of injuries, these don't get better. That's the thing. If a player has a one-off thing, like I don't want to say a knee thing, that's just what I'm going to. Like a broken bone is so much different than a broken ligament or a sprained ligament. And then you can look in medical history now and transfer market, and it's very revealing. Javier Pastore, I was against that one. Dybala, I was like, I love him, but at the same time, I knew the injury history was going to be problematic. And look, it's been problematic. Renato Sanchez is completely different. I remember when Roma Press posted that article, like he spoke to a witch doctor. That's not true. It was a joke he made in the tunnel that got picked up in French. So I was talking just to Sosa before I said no, we're talking about raising the level for Cristante. He also says, I think Lukaku and Abraham in attack would be a scary duo, especially with Dybala as an attacking mid. I don't know what's going to happen with Abraham when he gets back from injury. That also spells something interesting for Azmoun. Does Azmoun get frozen out with Belotti now? Does that situation get any better for these two players? I can't imagine, but maybe if it's already set in stone that Abraham's going to go back to the Premier League, then I could see Osmoon sticking around, maybe a little bit longer, maybe on another year. I quite like Osmoon. I think he offers something different compared to the other strikers. So let's see what happens with that. But guys, I think we should also just take a look at the starting lineups. We've got Chesney, unfortunately. Um, that's a transfer I always just cry a little bit about. Let me make this bigger for us. In net there, Gatti and Bremer and Danilo make the back three for Juventus today. Then it was Weah playing a right wing back role. He was more of like a true winger, actually. With McKennie, Locatelli, Rabiot, and Kostic. McKennie had a good game, as did Rabiot, who scores the goal. Rabiot, I have to admit, I was wrong on. I thought he was going to be just kind of a pushover 3-4 years ago. He joined Juventus, turned his career around, and he's turned into a good player, a good, solid, I would say above good. Very good. He's not great, but he's a quality midfielder. And Vlahovic with the 18-year-old Yildiz up top. But what we're here to see was Roma's starting formation: Indica, Llorente, Mancini, who were ahead of Rui Patricio, with Zalewski, who started on the left, instead of Spinazzola, who looks to be heading away from Rome, perhaps to Saudi Arabia. I would put my money on that. Bove, Paredes, Cristante were chosen over Pellegrini. The thinking is that Bove gives more balance to this side than Pellegrini would, just due to Bove's overall athleticism, which I'm a big fan of. Then we've got Christensen down on the right and Dybala and Lukaku. If we look at who got into the pitch, Chiesa, Milik, Rugani, Ealing Jr., and El Shaarawy Azmoun and Pellegrini for Roma. So only utilizing 3 substitutes there. If we go back at the statistics, shots were shared all around. Shots on target were 2 for Roma, but only 1 was really threatening. The best chance from Dybala actually went wide of the post. That was the outside of the boot flick he had. I think that was laid off from Christensen. Quite a lot of passes for Roma today, more than we see on average. That's because Juventus went into their own Mourinho-style low block that Allegri had them do. And not a lot of corners for each, just 2 apiece, 1 yellow card apiece. Mancini avoids his ban. So, guys, we're going to go through a couple more comments, keep throwing them in, and then we're going to sign off. We're like 23, 24 minutes in. Chifu says, Roma's perceived vision for Tammy is what's wrong with Roma. Nothing wrong with having top players in every position. We can't have a limit on the quality players we have in the team. So I think that I agree with what you're saying, Chifu, but I think that the counter to that is that Roma need to sell. They're going to have to sell in order to finance more, in order to balance out the squad more. So if they kept Abraham and the other guys went back to wherever, back on loan deals, I would say, okay, Roma's putting a lot of faith in him and I can get behind that. And hopefully he becomes a great player. But coming off an ACL tear, I don't know. Sane is here, says, Juventus played Roma's game. It wasn't an Allegri game. And a lot of Roma's players ghosted today. So I think that the one thing that made me really sad today, and I do cry, look at my banner, is it kind of feels like a mediocre performance. Yeah, they played good. Not good. They played decent. They hung in there. They fought. But I didn't see that real like tenacity, that almost like anger. And I always think back to Raja Nainggolan and the mentality that he brought the team. It's one thing to keep fighting, but what about when you stringere denti to really like bite the bullet and give it your all and go out on the pitch and like say, I'm not leaving this pitch until I'm bleeding. That goal, I'm getting that goal no matter what. I'm helping out this team no matter what. I'm winning the ball back. So I saw that from some players. I saw it in some moments, but not in entirety. And I don't know why Roma tend to just like roll. I don't want to be that critical again, but I just want to see more. I want to see villains. I want to see bad boys. I want to see these guys play like gangsters. I want them to go away to the Juventus Stadium, come away with 3 points, and hold their heads up high as they go back to Rome, because there's nothing worse than going back in the airplane or the bus or the train with a loss. And that stinks. That kills your team vibe. Happy New Year's to you, Angelo. Yeah, so was I. Never around. Leo says, what do you expect January Mercato? What positions does Roma need? I think they need everything. I think Roma start off with a center back to cover Indica. They need somebody much faster and more physical on the wing, somebody ruthless. I think they need a better attacking mid, somebody Mourinho can depend on who links the team like a Wesley Schneider type. Mourinho could really use. I do miss Veretout and Oliveira. These were, and Mkhitaryan, same breed as those players. Mkhitaryan being the most technical of them. I know it's difficult for you, Chifu says, but I think the secret to growing the channel is keep putting out videos and ideas more frequently. Sometimes it takes just one video for a channel to blow up. Cool, man. Thank you for that. I'm gonna keep on being consistent, putting out different types of content, and just being there, being present and being hopefully that go-to for Roma fans and build up that community. I hope that's a reasonable answer. Let me know what you think about that too. By the way, guys, throw in some comments on the actual video too, a like, subscription. I'm gonna head off now. I'm trying not to be too loud because my baby's starting to sleep. But thank you for coming in the stream. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about Mourinho's press conference. All right. See you then.